Hello, good people, and welcome to Finite Skills Hub. Here, we learn, we connect, and we grow. In the last 5 years, there's been a lot of new features and functions in Microsoft Excel, particularly for those using Excel 2021 or Microsoft 365. You would have seen these changes. So, to make it easier for you, we are going to start a new series where we'll take some of these features, break it down, and then show you practical ways you can use them to save yourself time and work smart at the office. We begin with this episode. We want to take a look at dynamic arrays. What is it? How does it save us time from calculations? And how does it differ from using cell reference, absolute missed, and relative reference? We use some simple case studies to help you get a clear understanding on how you can use this. So if you are game, join me in Excel and let's go through this together. Okay, so we start off with what dynamic arrays is. If you've been using Excel for a while, you know that the regular calculation engine is one formula, one cell. So if you create one formula, it ends up in one cell. So as an example, let's look at this simple calculation where you are supposed to calculate total sales for each sales agent. Right. The regular way to do this is to take the quantity and multiply by 18. Okay, and you copy this down. That's how legacy Excel works. But in September 2018, this calculation engine changed. So instead of creating it in one cell and then dragging it down, you now have the ability to multiply the ranges. So as an example, I can select the whole of the quantity range, okay, and multiply this by the selling price. Okay, now if I do this and I press enter, it gives me the answers in the spilled range or a spilled array. Okay, makes it easier, right? So this takes care of having to create it in one cell and then copying it down. And that is what dynamic arrays is all about. Now, it is also intelligent enough to know which cells in your calculation are supposed to be absolute reference and which ones are supposed to be relative. So let's take the next example. So here I'm supposed to calculate commission for each sales agent. Ideally, I will take the 90,000, okay, and then multiply it by 15%. Now, if you are very conversant with locking and not locking cells, you realize that I will have to lock the commission rate, okay, so that it doesn't go down as I copy, but not with dynamic arrays. So here I can select the earlier spelled array. So it's a very simple process. I take the first cell and then I bring the hash. So when I bring the hash, it selects the whole array that I had earlier. Now with this, I can multiply it by 15%. I don't have to lock this. So I can press enter and then you realize that I get another spilled array. So this is the calculation. I didn't have to lock any cell. I didn't have to drag down. So this is what we are referring to. It makes it easy for you to just calculate and spill the answers over a range of cells. Now let's go and look at some other practical examples. So here you have some products on the left and then you have some allocation rates on the right. You are supposed to allocate the product to each department based on the percentages. So again, you start off with your regular formula. So I will multiply this by 25%. I would have to go through the whole locking of rows and locking of columns to make it easier for me to copy right and copy down, right? But I don't have to do that. So just by extending this and then taking this all the way, okay, I can now have my calculation in one go. So this is what we refer to as the spilled array or dynamic array. Now, it must be said that when you calculate like this, the formula actually lives in the first cell, right? So if you try deleting it from any other cell, you cannot delete it. You cannot make any changes in any part of the spilled array apart from the first cell. So if I take this and I delete, it's gone. I can bring it back. If I want to copy the same way, I take it from the very first cell, right? So that is one good example of how you can avoid absolute mixed and relative referencing. Not in all cases though, but for very structured cases like this, it makes it easier. Okay, now let's go on to this example. So in the third example, we have a company, Finest Capital. It operates 10 funds for their various projects. Now the company has a retention policy such that it retains 10 to 30% of the funds subject to the board's approval, and it redistributes the remaining amount to the various departments based on their percentage. Our goal is to calculate the percentage that each department will receive after the retention. A simple case study, but it allows us to apply, if you like, complex cell referencing to get our answers. So bottom line is that these fund balances, we are supposed to withhold 20%, okay, and then when we are done, we apply the nets to the various departments. So let's do our first calculation. So I'll take the 47,000 and then we multiply this opening bracket 1 minus this 20%. Okay, this gives us the balance after the retention. Now we are supposed to multiply this, okay, by 12% to get the fund for department 1. Okay, now if I had to copy this, I have to lock some rows and columns here to make it easier, right? So because if I do a Control R to the right, at the points the formula starts referencing the wrong or empty cells. Okay, now let's try this with dynamic array calculations. So here I'm going to expand this, okay, and then for the 12 and for the rates, I'll take it all the way here. Okay, now this is the retention rates. I'm not touching this, right? So when I press enter, this is one error that you need to be aware of when you're using dynamic arrays. So if there's something in the way of the spilled range that is blocking it from expressing the answers, you get this spilled error. Okay, all you need to do is just take off what is obstructing this. Okay, so when I delete this, then I have my calculation. So all the way, I have my final value applied to department 5 for fund 10. Again, I didn't have to use any of the cell referencing. Okay, now let's go to the next one. So Kofi Dora Yao and Sarah have an agreement with Zeal Bank to exchange their dollars for cedis. They, however, have to monitor the rates between the agreed rate with Zeal Bank and the going rate. So bottom line is that this is the exchange rate, right? Now, if they have to change their rate, they would have to adjust it on Monday by some 3 points, Tuesday go down by some 2 points. If they do it on Wednesday, they get the same rates and so on. So for this case study, all we need to do is actually adjust the rates. Okay, so you just have to adjust the rates by whatever rates you have on each day. So for 5.74, okay, this is going to be 5.44, the adjusted rate, right? So this is what I'm going to multiply by the amount they want to exchange, which is $960. Okay, so if I get this, the amount they are going to get is 5,222 cedis, right? It's a case study, so just the concepts that is very important here. So I take this, again, I don't have to do it cell by cell. I can multiply the ranges, so I'll take the whole of this, take the whole of that. Okay, again, because of the structure, it knows how to treat this single reference. Okay, so if I now multiply this for each of the cells, you realize that it has correctly calculated how much is due for each day for each of them. Okay, so once the data is structured, it knows how to handle the inherent absolute mixed and relative referencing, and that's the power of dynamic arrays. This last one is very exciting. So typical accounting finance case study. So you have some accounts, sales all the way to utilities, right? And then you want to compare actual and budget, how much has been spent. So we'll go through this simple calculation. Now that you know that we can multiply the ranges, right, or the array, you don't have to do it cell by cell. So I'll take the whole of this actual, and then I will divide this by budget. So the expectation is that this will give me a spelled array for each of the row items. Okay, now I have this. I want to put in the 3 icon red, yellow, green conditional formatting. So for items that are revenue lines like sales, if you do more than 60% of our budget, it should show green. But that should be reversed for items that are expenses. So if we do more than 60% for expense lines, that should be red. But how do we get this in one spelled range or in one spelled array? Okay, using dynamic arrays. So to do that, I'm going to reference the entire range. So I'll reference E95 hash to select the entire array, and then I have this. I'm duplicating this because I want to apply the 3 icon conditional formatting here. With this selected, I'll go to conditional formatting. I have the 3 icon sets here. Then I'll go to more rules, right? So in the more rules, the default behavior is that for items that are above 67%, okay, so I normally want to convert those to generic values. Okay, so we set this 0.67, that should be green for revenue lines. Okay, then midway between 33%, okay, that's the second third. Okay, this should be yellow, and then the final one, those that are less than 33 should be red, right? Now, because the dominant lines are expense lines, I want to reverse the icon order. So for items that we spent more than 67%, this should be the red icon, yellow, and so on. So I'm going to click OK, and then let's see what we get. So we have this. Okay, now we don't want sales to behave the same way. So we want to adjust the formula and then say that if the line item is equal to sales, you know what, turn it around, right? So let's adjust this formula. So we are going to do if, okay, and then say that if any of these account labels, okay, so if this account label is equal to sales, okay, I'll bring my comma, right? We want 1 minus. Okay, so 1 minus will change the number and then give us the inverse, right? Otherwise, bring the same E95, which is this one. Okay, so let's see if we get this correct. Initially, this was red, but because sales, they've really gone beyond the 60%, we expect this to change to green. Okay, so this will now reverse the output, and then you realize that we now have the correct figures, right? Now, these numbers are supposed to help us, okay, get the right values. So you can decide to even hide them. So I can come here, and then we'll manage the rules, and then we'll edit the rule and say show icon only. Okay, apply it, and then we center this like that. Okay, so the rule is that for revenue lines, if you spend more than 60%, it should be green. For expense lines, anything between 33 to 66 should be yellow. And then for expense lines, again, anything that is above 60% should be red. Okay, so this actually gives us the right icons. You can test it out. We share the Excel workbook with you. Please practice. But the idea is that Excel has really brought in a lot of features and functions. In subsequent episodes, we are going to dive deep into the dynamic array functions and again, use some practical case studies to help you understand clearly how you can save time and work smart with these new features. Thank you so much for joining us and hope to see you in the next edition.
If this video was helpful and you would like to receive more of these videos directly on your WhatsApp, you can send ad to this WhatsApp number. We'll add you to our broadcast list so you receive our videos directly. You can also visit our YouTube channel, Finance Skills Hub. All our old videos are here. Please subscribe for notification of new videos or connect with us on any of these social media handles. Thank you so much for watching.